Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you know, make it a little bit more.
Hi, this is Valerie Medina, Chicana Mama, here with Master Conguero Jorge Bermudez to do my third installment of Drawing on Spirit. So I'll get to the questions. Okay, Jorge. Great to see you. Thank you very much for coming out here to
My pleasure. It's a beautiful day
San
today.
Mateo. I know, gorgeous. So I'd like you to describe your work and your intentions and your goals. What do you hope to communicate to your listener?
I've been playing music for 50 years by the grace of God, and the most important thing that I feel about having played music for 50 years is that I learned early that as musicians we're healers. We need to lift people. People are having a hard time, and when you get out there as an entertainer, you're playing, you're singing, or whatever, the intention is always to lift people's spirits from the doldrums of what they might be going through, and of course yourself in the process. So that's always been my intention. I learned that early.
At what point did you become aware that you were creative?
That's a good question, because I started out as a guitar player as a little kid and wanted to run the neighborhood more than practice guitar. And then I got into conga drums with Leopoldo Rosales at about 14. And we started playing, and we had our bands, and we were very popular, and he went on to play in Malo, and I did as well too. But the most important thing about that question, say it again.
Well, at what point did you become aware that you were creative? Was
Right, okay, yeah.
You know,
okay,
was there an
you.
awareness?
And I knew it, I knew it, okay. The point where I became aware of my creativity was early in my playing, when Leopoldo Rosales and I started making up rhythms that were not Afro-Cuban, were not anything, but they were our own creations. And we started doing that as like 16, 17-year-olds, and we went, you know what, we can play in the book, but we can also make up our own stuff, and that was like an eye-opener for me.
Yeah. How did you feed that creativity, and were there others around you? Well, you mentioned Leo, but were there other people around you that
when it came to becoming a songwriter, which, you know, I produced over 45 songs for TV and film and written the majority of them, there are people that inspired me in my career to write, like Armando Peraza, who also was one of my mentors too, but he was a songwriter and he was always kind of my life coach. I'd credit him a lot, and the late Raul Rico was one of my best friends, and we were always in each other's psyche, trying to make sure that the other was doing well in life and in music. And the list goes on and on.
How has your music evolved over time?
The beauty of how my personal experience in music has been that I started as a musician, and then about 95 I started writing songs, and I started to get a fair amount of songs on TV and film, and I love the creative process. I love the idea of, you know, starting something from scratch and collaborating with people, and my God, hearing it on TV later was like a rush, especially when my mom was still alive. I remember like sitting with my mom, and she knew that I'd written this song, and the smile on her face was priceless, like her kid's music was on TV.
How, comparing from the time when you first started writing and then to the present time, how do you feel, is there a difference in your writing or putting together music? Do you find that it comes easily, or?
You know, the creativity thing is so fickle, as you know, as an artist.
Yeah.
It comes, it goes. Sometimes, like last summer, I had the richest creative period I've ever had, because I wrote 10 songs for the Mayans and submitted it, and you know, they're in their catalog. And it was actually after cancer I had the most explosive creative period of my life, and it was really mind-boggling to work at that rate. I'd never worked at that rate. I was writing with Andy Abad from Jennifer Lopez's band, and we'd get in the room and we would just be on fire, and music was like just coming out of us quick. That was the most thrilling experience of my life, because I've written, and the process takes different things sometimes, and most of the time the ideas come in the car, right? I'm singing into my phone, and I'm pulling over, but the ideas sometimes take longer to evolve. But this past summer, because I guess the recovery from cancer, I was really inspired, and they came fast. So I'll be releasing that CD soon.
How do you, when you say you're in the car and you're putting together something on the phone?
Yeah, my iPhone.
Yeah. How do you? What is it about the being in the car in particular?
I have no idea. It's a mystique for me because all my best songs come while I'm driving the car.
I've had that same experience.
A lot of songs were written on Highway 5.
Yeah.
You know, over the years of commuting back and forth between here and LA.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that. So what are your favorite instruments to play and why?
You know, there really isn't a favorite because I'm such a fan of music in general. I think I can answer that question better. For me, my favorite instrument is the one that works for that moment in the music, right? Like on my last song that I wrote for the Immigrant Kids, which was an award-winning song.
Yeah.
I wanted a cello on there, right? And we got a really beautiful cello on there, and it works like crazy because it brought the emotion on. So, you know, I love all instruments. You know, I've got a keyboard. I bang around the keyboard. I can't play competently on keys, but I can bang out my chords, and I can convey music ideas that I want with people. Sometimes between playing them badly and singing.
Talk to me a little bit more about collaboration. When you're with another artist and you give it a piece and that person listens and adds another piece to it, what are you experiencing with that person at the time?
That's a great question because there are sometimes, and I've had it, just like everybody has, collaborations that don't work.
Yeah.
Right? You get together and you try and it just kind of doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, been uncomfortable because you really wanted to do some work with that person, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's a lot like romance, you know.
Yeah.
And so you, like I said, like last summer, I wrote with Justin DeCenso, a writer out of St. Louis, and Andy Abad from Jennifer Lopez's band, and let's see, there was a couple of others, but the point is, with every one of those, and other people that I've written before, you click and it goes fast, and those are the best. You know, that you answer each other's questions. I wrote with, I have a song called Dance of the Divas. It's for all the divas, and I wrote it with Josie Aiello, and it's a favorite. I've gotten to use a lot, but I collaborated with Josie Aiello, who got what my vision was about divas, and that lyric writing in that moment might be some of the funnest of my career because it was just like bing, 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 bing. We had that lyric like knocked out, man, in like an hour and a half, you know. So it's magic. It's magic, you know. Sometimes you have the magic with songwriting buddies, and sometimes you don't.
You mentioned being in the car and getting inspired and putting it into a phone. How else does inspiration show up for you? I mean, can you be at a particular...
Life events.
Yeah.
Life events sometimes inspire.
Yeah.
Things I've written, songs for my mother, as you know, my auntie.
Yes.
You know, for Mother's Day, and this one for the children. I mean, that's kind of my tendency. I write for things that touch the heart, and I can never dictate what I'm going to be writing next. That's the hilarious part about my creativity is I don't know what's coming out. Like people have flat out said, write a song for me, write a song for that. Right. It just, my process is not like that. It's just like, okay, I'm writing a song, and here it comes. I wrote one for the San Francisco Giants, right? Called El Gigante. But the initial idea for it is that I have a 6'4" son named Ricky. He's 6'4", and when we used to go see my brother, who's now passed, and we'd see him, he was institutionalized because he was mentally ill, but he was hilarious. We'd walk in, and the first thing he'd say to me is, "Traíste tu gigante, tu hijo gigante," right? Which means, you know, you brought your giant son again.
Right.
And he's gone now. I love him, and I always kept that El Gigante. So this tune, El Gigante, you know, it's, you never can tell what's going to be the little thing that clicks, you know, that makes you go boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And sometimes it goes bone dry, you know, and it doesn't come.
Yeah, that's exciting. So, what would you say inspiration is at its core for you?
For me, it's God-given, for sure. And I mean, my thing is a little bit more spiritual because I had a 3-year battle with cancer, and I came back to the Lord in a big way, and try to live my life a lot better than before. So it's absolutely God-given. Other people don't have the spiritual beliefs that I have, but I really feel like at that point when that idea comes, that you absolutely think I'm not smart enough to come up with that idea, and it comes and you just go, wow, that's so beautiful. You have to give thanks. I'm sure that you have that moment in your painting where you go, man, this is beyond what I thought. It's coming out fabulous. And you go, oh man, thank you. Thank you. You get that rush of like, wow, that came through me. And as your things get better and better, as yours obviously have, your work, and I know that mine have, because they've gotten more accolades and been used a little bit more. It's that thing that the creative tool gets sharpened over the years.
Okay, speaking of accolades, you've received many awards for your work. You've been published. You've got your work on TV, in movies. What about? Is that a necessary piece that goes with? Is that the reward for being creative?
You're talking to probably one of the most ambitious musicians to come out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's been both my curse and my blessing. It's cost me a lot personally. I lost a marriage over it eventually, and it cost me a lot of time with my family. I've just moved back from Pasadena.
It's a sacrifice, right?
Yeah, I've just moved back from Pasadena after 20 years down there. So, to give you a short answer to your question, yes, it's made all the difference in the world that my music has gotten some notoriety and has been on some shows like CSI, Desperate Housewives, Jane the Virgin. It's given me a little bit more, I guess, for lack of another word, pedigree, right?
Validation? Validation.
Well, I say pedigree, and I'll say it in a very respectful way, because I had a conversation with a lady online regarding, when I first started, I was in Santana cover bands, right? And as I worked harder and harder, you go levels and levels and levels. So, some of the levels were playing with main acts that toured all over the nation, getting on TV, sitting in with Gypsy Kings on Telemundo, just some beautiful things that have happened in my career. But everything was a stepping stone, and not one of those things made me really famous. It just was a door-opening thing, which you need when you're trying to get your work published, you're trying to get your stuff used, because, as you know, when you're out there trying to get stuff used, the worst possible thing that they want to hear is from you. They don't want to hear from you. Hey, I'm great. My song's great.
Listen to me.
Listen to me. Look at my beautiful music. I mean, the most effective has been when somebody, like I mentioned, Dr. Eddie Rodriguez, somebody that's been kind enough to grab a bunch of people and go, look.
Come see this guy.
This guy's got something to offer. And those are blessings.
So how do you make room for creativity in your life? How do you hold that space?
Hilarious. That's hilarious. Creativity, when it comes, it just obliterates.
You move over, huh?
I've been in relationships where all of a sudden I'm like, I got to go over here for a second. I got to sing into my phone, and they don't understand the process. Of course, some people understand the process and some don't, but they don't know that when you're channeling, it's exactly channeling, like people that channel. Right.
It's almost that you step aside.
You're not there. And then some information. So I'd say it's ruined a couple of dates in my life and events with family, literally with my kids, where I'm like, on kids, hold on a second, Dad's got something here. I have to go over and do it. But it comes and goes, as I mentioned before. Then you go through stretches where no ideas come.
Is there a language that you've developed to talk about your work, your music? I mean, or does it just speak for itself?
The language is, this is a broad interpretation, but let me give you my point of view.
Okay.
Because I'm a musician who's been around the block a little bit, and 50 years, and I'll say this very carefully because people take this the wrong way often when I talk about it. There was a moment when I played on the platinum selling album for Crowded House, and I played on Don't Dream It's Over, which is a big rock and roll classic that you hear in supermarkets, and it'll be here forever. You know, it's one of those songs, and I got the opportunity to play with it on it, and a few other hits. But that moment when I watched the creativity, I was an employee, and I was watching the creativity that took place between those people in New Zealand that were that group, and I watched this thing explode around me, and I was just in support playing. But that moment transformed me, because I knew at that moment that I wanted to write more, and I wanted to write, like that song has a Beatle good vibe song about thing about it. I wanted to always write something that created a moment for people, that took them away from all the nonsense that going through in their lives. And that's always been the criterion. You know, I think that for you and I, if we touch people, you know, their hearts, souls, and minds, we've kind of done our gigs.
Right.
And
For
I
me,
say
that's enough,
I say this to a lot of young songwriters come and talk to me about getting it going and everything, and I just go, well, it took me a while to come to this level of maturity that I am now, but I'm at the level of maturity now that the process of writing and recording the music and giving birth to the music, that has to be your payday for a minute. And if that doesn't float your boat or get you high like it does the rest of us, then you know you're setting yourself for a world of disappointment, because
the rest isn't guaranteed.
Nothing's guaranteed. You don't know if it's going to get to in that Spielberg movie you just submitted it for, right? I mean, I do these things, and you know, you get rejected and stuff like that, but at the end of the game, you're grateful for being in the game. I just got contacted for Gentified. It's a new sitcom about Latinos, which is it really looks cool, and I sent them a bunch of songs. But for me, you know, that day I was happy because I was in the mix and they thought of me, right? Even though I moved to San Jose from Pasadena, you know, I put 20 years in down there, and thanks to the technology, I can still write with them.
Right. So during a performance, how do you sense or receive feedback from your audience?
Well, as I mentioned to you before the interview, I'm going to be having, you know, nearly career-ending surgery with my back pretty soon coming up. I don't know whether I'll be able to play after, but it's been a terrific run, and I've had a lot of time, and I think the thing that made me the most happy in my career, I'll give you an example. One time, some friends were playing at the King, and I came in, and they were jamming. They sounded good musically, but the place was, everybody was sitting down, right? And you know, I mean, I'm a formidable player. I've done it a lot, but one of the things that Armando always put in my head, Armando Pedaza, was you got to get people moving. You got to get them to dance. You got to lift them.
Right.
You know, you're not there to show off and take a bunch of conga solos. You're there to make sure those people get up and rid themselves of their problems.
Right.
He was adamant about that kind of stuff.
That's a fantastic
that day at the King,
that
day at the King, I'm sitting there, and it's a perfect example. I mean, I always think about that as the crystallized moment of what the hell we're supposed to do. They asked me to sit in, right? And immediately I got into a groove with the bass player, and we started swinging, and the band was swinging, and it was sounding great. And then all of a sudden, that damn floor was packed, and it stayed that way the whole time that I played that set. So it was like almost having a superpower of going in that room, where that room was kind of like, right? And all of a sudden you got up there with all your strength and valor that you have at that point. You want to like kick ass, and you get up there, and all of a sudden everybody's at and everybody loves you at the end of it, going, damn man, you got them out of it, you know.
That's awesome. I love that story. So do you create a separate type of music for yourself versus maybe what you publish and what you put out?
You know, I study classical, so you know, I spend a fair amount of time listening to calming classical music, just because the medical things we go through need you to stay cool about everything, you know. I'm always having to battle making sure the cancer doesn't come back. So, I mean, at this point in my life, I find myself really happily listening to, I'll listen to the soundtrack on the movie channel, right? The old time movies.
Yeah.
And I find myself digging the movies a little bit, but just turning the sound up on my, and going, holy cow, listen to the work they did on this soundtrack back in the day. So I'm a lover of everything. Of course, congas is my mother instrument. I went on to play a whole lot of percussion stuff. And like I told you, I defend myself on keys for composition. And I sing, but I sing by default. I mean, I studied for a long time, and it didn't start that way, but I started writing, and I went, man, if I'm going to be writing, I got to build up a voice that's, you know, acceptable and not traumatize my friends and neighbors. So, I mean, I started late with my voice, but now I'm a baritone tenor, and I've sung on things that have been on TV and film, so I haven't embarrassed myself. There's even been a couple of rap things I've done that I've told nobody about.
Oh, interesting.
There was a rap tune that was on Dexter, and I'm rapping away in Spanish, and it went by, and I didn't tell nobody because
that was you.
I'm not a rapper, man. You know, I just had fun.
Oh, I gotta look for that episode. Okay, what would you say? This is the last question, but I'll allow you to kind of freeform it afterwards.
Okay.
You do a little rapping if you want. What would you say to someone who may be seeking to create or tap into their own creativity?
Wow, that's a broad question.
I know it is.
It is a broad question because, you know, and here's where I go into the lecture thing. I grew up in the Bay Area around a beautiful community of musicians that all nourished me. You know, Peter Escobedo and his family,
Yes.
Armando Peraza, Raul Rico, Orestes Vilato, John Santos. The list goes on and on. We are rich here
Yes,
in the Bay
we
Area.
are.
What we got. And none of these guys behave like this. But when I was in a very famous rock band that I will not mention, and we were making a record, the emphasis was on getting high in the studio. And I was in my 20s, and I remember being so disappointed that we were trying to make something artistic that was going to go out to the masses.
Well, in your late 20s, that was the draw to be in a rock band, right?
Right.
Well, one of the draws.
Right. We won't mention which one this was.
In the late
'cause
60s?
We won't mention which one this was
No, we
because
don't have
they're
to
famous.
do that. No.
But the point I want to make is the music suffered because of the drug use.
Right.
Uh,
It didn't enhance
Yeah,
or
and
allow creativity to flow
It didn't
properly.
come out well.
Right.
It tanked. That record tanked right after. And I knew the reason to my soul. I was just like, I used to think to myself, well, had you guys not gotten so high, maybe the music would have come out a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So when I moved to Southern California in the early 80s, the thing that impressed me the most and that I loved and embraced, because I got to do sessions with many famous musicians. That's one of the blessings of my career. I've gotten to play with a lot of. I'll give you an example. We did a Christian record live with Abraham Laboriel. Abraham Laboriel is one of the top bass players in LA, and he's like Michael Jackson, I mean, just records on and on. My first time that I got recorded with him, and I'm a little intimidated. He's a black Mexican. It ended quick because his room, we all had separate rooms. I was able to make eye contact with the guy, and we were able to get into a swing, and that record came out beautiful. It was for an artist named Pearl. My point is that those guys, their work ethic is about leaving their ego at the door and a team effort that makes a beautiful project that the audience is going to embrace. They're trying to hit it out of the ballpark. Nobody's sitting there getting wasted or anything during the majority of the things that happen down there. I do want to end with something pretty funny. Is that a good summary for your question?
So your advice would be not to.
My advice would be like keep focused. I mean, now laws are different. You can use marijuana. I would say use the pot respectfully.
Right.
I never went in front of an audience.
As medicina.
Yeah, as medicine. I didn't use it. I didn't smoke and go in front of audiences because I wanted to be there for them.
Right.
I
Totally
wanted to
present.
be boom. Make eye contact.
Yeah.
Many young musicians don't make eye contact. They don't engage the audience.
They're not capable of it.
When I teach, it's one of the things when I teach people conga drums and as percussion, I always say, get used to not learn the technique. At first, you've got to look at your hands, right? That your hands are making a good sound, but learn how to engage the audience because you may be a little shy or embarrassed about it, but you'll see that once you start engaging the audience and they know that you're there trying to play to make them feel better, you'll get something back and they'll get something out of it, and beautiful harmony takes place that people get lifted. Don't forget that your job is to lift people. That would be my biggest advice. Sure, you want to play good music, be a good musician and everything, but play it. But on a final humorous note, because now that I'm in a semi-retirement, I just want to laugh with the audience and at myself because I've come at the end, and God knows where I'll be returning to do some more work, but it came to me the two big people that I said no to, and they're two quick stories. I had done 9 months in Vegas in a flamenco show in 1989, and my best friend Chalo Eduardo, another Bay Area guy, invited me as I got home, beat to hell, to San Bruno with my family. I hadn't seen him. He says, come on down to Anaheim. I've got $500 for you to play in the percussion section for the guy from Menudo, right? And I'm beat, and I'm thinking, oh man, Menudo, I hated Menudo. Dumb ass. I said no. Had I gone, I would have played that gig, made the money, and the next gig was the Grammys.
Oh, geez.
And that's a good one. So the second one would be, I'm very devoted to my family, you know, in spite of the fact that I've done a lot of traveling and kept away from them. But there was one time that my daughter-in-law had to have emergency surgery in Honolulu. 2003, 2005, in there. So I had to literally spend a ticket from LA, buy a ticket for like almost $1,000, get over there, take care of her, and take care of my autistic grandson and my granddaughter. My son was working. That was my gig for a few weeks.
Yeah.
I was happy to do it. I love my kids. I'm over there, and I get the phone call of my career, the one I had been waiting for my entire career, because I'm a big Quincy Jones fan.
Oh.
I was referred by my friend Arnold Lucas, another Bay Area guy who's a singer percussionist that was in a band called Kraken here in the 70s. And he had been doing work for Quincy, couldn't do it. Quincy was doing a USO tour with a killer band for the soldiers. All I had to do was be at rehearsal next day, and I had the gig to do. I had to say no to Quincy Jones.
Wow.
Broke my heart.
Wow.
I said, I have to take care of my family.
Okay. So what do you think you learned from that?
Family's more important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a killer opportunity that I never got again.
Right.
But I can go to sleep at night because my granddaughter, my grandson, and my daughter-in-law needed me. So.
You want to play a little bit?